Have you ever noticed that the more you think about something, the harder it becomes to actually do it? We tell ourselves we're just being careful. We say we're waiting for the right moment, the perfect plan, or one more piece of information. But what if overthinking isn't protecting you? What if it's the very thing that's keeping you stuck? The truth is, success doesn't belong to the people who have all the answers. It belongs to the people who are willing to take the first step before they feel completely ready. Today, we're going to explore why your mind keeps holding you back, how fear disguises itself as preparation, and how taking imperfect action can completely change the direction of your life. Because your future isn't built by the thoughts you keep in your head, it's built by the actions you choose to take. Let's begin. Most people believe that thinking more will automatically lead to better decisions. It sounds logical. If you spend more time analyzing every possibility, weighing every outcome, and preparing for every obstacle, you should end up making the smartest choice. But that's not how the human mind actually works. There comes a point where thinking stops being helpful and starts becoming a trap. Instead of giving you clarity, it fills your mind with more questions than answers. Instead of making you feel confident, it makes you feel uncertain. Instead of helping you move forward, it quietly convinces you to stay exactly where you are. The strange thing about overthinking is that it often disguises itself as responsibility. You tell yourself you're just being careful. You convince yourself that you're planning, researching, or waiting for the perfect moment. On the surface, it feels productive because your mind is busy all the time. You're constantly imagining different scenarios, creating backup plans, and predicting what could go wrong. But being mentally busy is not the same as making progress. A mind that never stops analyzing can become a prison where ideas are born but never brought to life. Think about how many dreams have remained dreams simply because someone believed they needed one more day to prepare. One more book to read, one more course to complete, one more opinion to hear, one more sign that everything will work out. Days turn into weeks, weeks become months. Before long, years have passed, and the opportunity that once felt exciting begins to fade. The dream doesn't disappear because it was impossible. It disappears because action kept getting postponed in the name of preparation. Our brains are designed to keep us safe, not necessarily successful. Whenever we face uncertainty, the mind starts searching for danger. It imagines rejection before acceptance, failure before success, criticism before support. This isn't because something is wrong with you. It's because your brain naturally pays more attention to possible threats than possible rewards. In ancient times, this instinct helped human beings survive. Today, it often keeps people from chasing opportunities that could transform their lives. The problem is that your imagination is incredibly powerful. It can create problems that don't even exist. Before making a simple decision, your mind can invent dozens of worst-case scenarios. You imagine embarrassing yourself. You imagine people judging you. You imagine wasting time, losing money, or failing publicly. None of these events have happened, yet your body reacts as if they're already real. Your heart beats faster. Your confidence drops. Your motivation disappears. You begin avoiding the very thing that could help you grow. Overthinking also creates the illusion that certainty is possible. You believe that if you think long enough, eventually you'll eliminate every risk. But life doesn't work that way. No entrepreneur starts a business knowing exactly what will happen. No athlete begins a career guaranteed of victory. No creator publishes their first work with complete confidence that everyone will love it. Every meaningful achievement begins with uncertainty. The people who succeed are not the ones who eliminate risk. They're the ones who accept that uncertainty is part of the journey. Another reason overthinking becomes dangerous is because it steals your energy before you've even started. Every decision demands mental effort. When you spend hours replaying possibilities in your head, you drain yourself emotionally. By the time it's actually time to act, you're exhausted. You mistake that exhaustion for a lack of ability, when in reality you've simply spent all your energy imagining instead of doing. There is also a hidden cost that most people never notice. Every time you delay action because of overthinking, you slowly weaken your trust in yourself. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow comes and goes. You promise yourself next week will be different, yet nothing changes. Eventually, your own promises stop carrying weight. You begin doubting your ability to follow through. Confidence doesn't disappear overnight. It fades every time your actions fail to match your intentions. What's interesting is that action works differently from thought. Thought expands uncertainty, while action reduces it. When you actually take the first step, reality replaces imagination. Instead of wondering whether something is possible, you begin collecting real evidence. You learn what works, what doesn't, what needs improvement, and what surprises you. Information gained through experience is always more valuable than information created through endless speculation. Many people wait until they feel confident before taking action. In reality, confidence is usually the result of action, not the cause of it. Think about learning any new skill. Whether it's driving, speaking in public, starting a business, or learning an instrument, nobody feels completely confident on the first day. Confidence grows with repetition. Every small action teaches your brain that you are capable of handling more than you previously believed. Overthinking also convinces you that mistakes are disasters. It tells you that one wrong move will ruin everything. But mistakes are not evidence that you should stop. They are evidence that you're participating. Every expert was once a beginner who made countless errors. Every successful person has stories of rejection, failure, embarrassment, and setbacks. The difference is that they treated those experiences as lessons instead of final verdicts. Sometimes the greatest illusion created by overthinking is the belief that staying still is safer than moving forward. It feels comfortable because nothing changes immediately. But staying still has consequences too. Opportunities disappear, skills remain undeveloped, relationships never begin, ideas stay locked inside your mind. While you're trying to avoid failure, you're also avoiding growth. The risk of taking action is visible, but the cost of inaction is often invisible until years have passed. Life rarely rewards perfect plans. It rewards people who are willing to learn, adapt, and continue moving despite uncertainty. Every meaningful accomplishment starts with imperfect steps. Every breakthrough begins with someone deciding that progress matters more than perfection. The mind will always be capable of creating another question, another doubt, another reason to wait. If you allow every imagined obstacle to determine your choices, you'll spend more time living inside possibilities than experiencing reality. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions a human being can experience. It has the ability to influence decisions, shape behavior, and even determine the direction of a person's life. While fear itself is not the enemy, allowing it to make your decisions often becomes the biggest obstacle between where you are and where you want to be. The challenge is that fear rarely introduces itself honestly. It doesn't usually say, "I'm stopping you because you're afraid." Instead, it disguises itself as logic, caution, or responsibility, making it difficult to recognize that it is actually controlling your actions. One of the greatest misconceptions people have is believing that successful individuals are fearless. They imagine that entrepreneurs, athletes, leaders, and creators somehow wake up with complete confidence and no doubts. The reality is very different. They experience fear just like everyone else. Their hearts race before important moments. They question whether they are good enough. They worry about making mistakes and facing criticism. The difference is not the absence of fear. The difference is that they refuse to let fear become the final decision maker. Fear of failure is especially convincing because it paints vivid pictures of everything that could go wrong. Before you've even started, your mind begins creating stories about rejection, embarrassment, financial loss, disappointment, or public criticism. These stories feel real because your brain doesn't always distinguish between imagined experiences and actual ones. Your emotions respond as though those failures have already happened, making the possibility of taking action seem far more dangerous than it truly is. This is why so many talented people remain invisible. They have incredible ideas, valuable skills, and meaningful dreams, yet fear convinces them to stay hidden. They postpone launching the business they have been planning for years. They avoid speaking up in meetings because they worry about saying the wrong thing. They delay creating content because they fear negative comments. They keep waiting for a version of themselves that feels completely ready, even though that version may never arrive. Failure itself is often misunderstood. Most people think failure is the opposite of success, but in reality, failure is part of the path towards success. Every meaningful achievement includes moments where things didn't go according to plan. Every innovation was built on experiments that didn't work. Every champion has experienced defeats. Every skilled professional has made mistakes that taught lessons impossible to learn from books alone. The fear of failure becomes even stronger when people tie their self-worth to their results. Instead of thinking, "I failed at this attempt," they begin believing, "I am a failure. That small difference in language changes everything. One describes an event. The other describes identity. An unsuccessful outcome does not define your value as a person. It simply provides information about what needs to improve. When people separate their identity from their temporary results, failure becomes much less intimidating. Another reason fear becomes so powerful is because society often celebrates success while hiding the struggles behind it. We see the finished product, but rarely witness the countless setbacks that came before it. We admire confident speakers without seeing the awkward first presentations. We respect successful business owners without knowing how many times they were rejected. We applaud accomplished artists without seeing the hundreds of imperfect drafts they created before producing something remarkable. Social comparison also feeds the fear of failure. Looking at someone else's highlight reel can make your own beginning feel insignificant. You compare your first attempt to someone else's 10th year of experience. You assume their confidence came naturally while yours never will. What you don't see are the years they spent learning, failing, adjusting, and improving behind the scenes. Every expert was once uncertain. Every master was once a beginner. Fear also encourages procrastination because delaying action temporarily reduces discomfort. When you tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, you experience a brief sense of relief. That relief tricks your brain into believing postponement solved the problem. In reality, nothing has changed except the deadline. Tomorrow arrives carrying the exact same fear, often made even stronger by guilt and frustration over lost time. Perfectionism is another disguise worn by fear. People often claim they are waiting until everything is perfect before taking action. They want the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect equipment, or the perfect level of confidence. While striving for excellence is valuable, perfectionism often becomes an excuse to avoid the possibility of failure. If nothing is ever good enough to share, then criticism can never happen, but neither can growth, opportunity, or achievement. Fear also limits creativity. When your primary goal becomes avoiding mistakes, you naturally stop experimenting. You choose familiar paths over innovative ones. You avoid bold ideas because they carry uncertainty. Yet, almost every breakthrough in history required someone to risk being wrong. Creativity thrives in environments where mistakes are accepted as part of learning rather than treated as permanent evidence of incompetence. One of the most important truths about fear is that it grows in isolation. The longer an important decision stays inside your mind, the larger it appears. Your imagination keeps adding new obstacles until the challenge seems impossible. Taking even one small action interrupts that cycle. Reality begins replacing assumptions. Instead of wondering what might happen, you start discovering what actually happens. Most of the fears that seemed overwhelming become manageable once you experience them directly. Action also changes your relationship with fear. The first step is usually the hardest because your mind has no evidence that you can handle it. Once you take that step, however small it may be, you create proof that you are capable of moving despite uncertainty. That evidence becomes the foundation for future confidence. Every action weakens fear's authority because your experience begins speaking louder than your imagination. It's important to remember that courage is not the elimination of fear. Courage is choosing what matters more than fear. A parent protecting a child still feels fear. An entrepreneur investing in a dream still feels fear. A student giving an important presentation still feels fear. Courage simply means refusing to let fear decide the outcome. When your purpose becomes stronger than your anxiety, your actions begin reflecting your values instead of your worries. The greatest opportunities in life often exist on the other side of uncertainty. Every conversation that changes your future begins with the risk of being ignored. Every career breakthrough begins with the possibility of rejection. Every meaningful relationship begins with the chance of vulnerability. Every ambitious goal carries the possibility of failure because anything truly worthwhile demands the willingness to step into the unknown. Perfection is one of the most attractive ideas the human mind can chase. It promises certainty, admiration, and the comfort of knowing that everything is exactly as it should be. At first glance, striving for perfection sounds like a strength. It sounds disciplined, responsible, and ambitious. People often wear perfectionism like a badge of honor, believing it reflects high standards and commitment to excellence. But beneath that polished surface lies a hidden problem. Perfection is often less about achieving greatness and more about avoiding criticism, mistakes, and discomfort. The pursuit of perfection convinces you that your work should only be shared when every detail is flawless. Whether you're starting a business, creating content, writing a book, launching a project, or learning a new skill, your mind keeps whispering that one more adjustment is necessary, one more revision, one more improvement, one more week of preparation. It creates the illusion that success belongs to those who wait until everything is perfect. In reality, that perfect moment rarely arrives. Progress and perfection move in opposite directions more often than people realize. Progress requires movement, experimentation, and learning. Perfection demands certainty before action. Progress accepts mistakes as part of growth. Perfection treats mistakes as evidence that you are not ready. Because of this difference, people chasing perfection often remain in the same place, while those willing to be imperfect continue moving forward. One of the biggest dangers of perfectionism is that it raises impossible standards. Every time you complete something, your mind immediately notices another flaw. Instead of celebrating what you've accomplished, you focus on what could have been better. Satisfaction becomes temporary because your expectations keep moving further away. No matter how much effort you invest, perfection always seems just out of reach. It becomes a finish line that keeps shifting every time you get closer. Many talented individuals never allow the world to benefit from their abilities because they are trapped by perfectionism. They have brilliant ideas sitting in notebooks, unfinished projects stored on hard drives, and dreams postponed for years. They believe they are protecting the quality of their work, but they are actually protecting themselves from the possibility of judgment. By refusing to release anything imperfect, they also refuse the opportunity to improve through real experience. Learning has always depended on mistakes. A child learning to walk falls countless times before taking steady steps. No one expects perfection during that process because everyone understands that failure is part of learning. Yet as adults, many people forget this truth. They expect themselves to perform perfectly from the beginning. They become frustrated by mistakes that are not signs of weakness, but evidence that learning is taking place. Think about any skill you've admired in another person. Whether it's public speaking, leadership, music, writing, sports, or business, every expert began as a beginner. Their first attempts were far from perfect. They improved because they kept practicing, adjusting, and learning from feedback. If they had waited until they were perfect before taking action, they would never have gained the experience needed to become exceptional. Perfectionism also creates unnecessary pressure. When every task feels like it must be flawless, even simple decisions become emotionally exhausting. You spend excessive time worrying about details that others may never notice. Instead of enjoying the process of creating something meaningful, you become consumed by the fear of making even the smallest mistake. That pressure often leads to burnout, frustration, and eventually a loss of motivation. Another hidden consequence of perfectionism is procrastination. People often assume procrastination comes from laziness, but many hardworking individuals procrastinate because they care too much about the outcome. They delay starting because they fear their first attempt won't match the ideal picture in their minds. The longer they wait, the more intimidating the task becomes. What began as a desire to do something well eventually becomes a reason not to do it at all. Perfectionism also limits innovation. New ideas require experimentation, and experimentation naturally includes uncertainty. When you're afraid of making mistakes, you become less willing to try different approaches. You stay within familiar boundaries because they feel safer. Yet nearly every breakthrough in history happened because someone accepted the possibility of failure. Innovation has never been built on perfection. It has always been built on curiosity, persistence, and the willingness to improve through repeated attempts. There is a significant difference between excellence and perfection. Excellence is about giving your best effort with the resources and knowledge you currently have. Perfection is about expecting a flawless outcome that leaves no room for error. Excellence encourages growth because it recognizes that improvement is continuous. Perfection discourages growth because it insists that anything less than flawless is unacceptable. Choosing excellence allows you to keep moving. Chasing perfection often keeps you standing still. Feedback is another important part of growth that perfectionism tends to avoid. When people fear criticism, they isolate their work until it feels safe enough to reveal. But meaningful feedback only comes after something is shared. Every suggestion, every constructive comment, and every real-world experience provides information that no amount of private planning can replace. Improvement happens through interaction with reality, not endless preparation. Perfectionism can also damage confidence. Every time you refuse to act because something isn't perfect, you reinforce the belief that you are not ready. Over time, your confidence becomes dependent on impossible standards instead of real accomplishments. Confidence grows through completed actions, not flawless intentions. Every finished project, regardless of its imperfections, strengthens your belief that you are capable of learning and improving. Some of the world's most successful companies launched products that were far from perfect. They listened to customers, gathered feedback, made adjustments, and continued improving over time. If they had waited until every feature was flawless, they might never have entered the market. Their willingness to begin before everything was perfect gave them opportunities to learn that endless planning never could. The same principle applies to personal growth. You don't become confident before speaking in public. You become confident by speaking in public repeatedly. You don't become skilled before starting a business. You become skilled by running one. You don't become disciplined before building healthy habits. Discipline develops through consistently practicing those habits. Experience teaches lessons that preparation alone cannot provide. The fear of imperfection often comes from believing that others expect flawless performance. In reality, people connect more deeply with authenticity than perfection. They appreciate honesty, effort, resilience, and growth. Seeing someone overcome challenges is often far more inspiring than watching someone appear perfect from the beginning. Mistakes make success relatable because they remind others that progress is possible for anyone willing to keep learning. Every masterpiece was once an unfinished draft. Every successful career began with uncertain first steps. Every meaningful accomplishment passed through moments of doubt, correction, and improvement. The path to excellence has never been a straight line. It has always been shaped by people who were willing to move forward despite imperfections, trusting that consistent progress would take them further than endless waiting ever could. People often believe confidence comes before action. They think that one day they will wake up feeling completely fearless, fully prepared, and naturally motivated to pursue their goals. They imagine confidence as something that appears first, making every challenge easier to face. But life teaches a different lesson. Confidence is rarely the starting point. It is usually the result of taking action, especially the small actions that seem almost insignificant at the time. When people think about achieving big goals, they naturally focus on the finish line. They picture the successful business, the healthy body, the dream career, the best-selling book, or the financial freedom they hope to achieve. While having a vision is important, focusing only on the final destination can make the journey feel overwhelming. The distance between where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow appears so large that your mind begins to doubt whether it's even possible. That feeling of being overwhelmed often leads to inaction. Small actions change that perspective. Instead of asking yourself how to accomplish everything at once, you ask a much simpler question. What is the next step? Not the next 100 steps. Not the perfect strategy for the next 5 years. Just the next action that moves you forward. This simple shift reduces pressure because your brain no longer has to solve every problem immediately. It only needs to solve the problem directly in front of you. The human mind responds differently to progress than it does to intentions. Every time you complete even a small task, your brain receives evidence that you are capable of following through. That evidence becomes more valuable than positive thinking because it is based on experience. You no longer have to convince yourself that you can make progress. You have already proven it through action. Each completed step strengthens the belief that another step is possible. Consider how a building is constructed. No one arrives at an empty piece of land expecting a skyscraper to appear overnight. Workers begin by preparing the foundation. Then they add one layer after another. Every brick, every beam, and every floor contributes to something much larger. If someone judged the project after only a few days, they might believe nothing significant was happening. Yet those small daily efforts eventually create something extraordinary. Personal growth follows the same principle. One reason people underestimate small actions is because the results are often invisible at first. Reading 10 pages of a book doesn't immediately make you an expert. Exercising for 20 minutes doesn't instantly transform your health. Saving a small amount of money doesn't immediately create wealth. Practicing a skill for half an hour doesn't make you a master. Because the changes are gradual, many people assume their efforts are not working. They give up before consistency has time to produce meaningful results. Nature provides countless examples of this principle. A tree does not grow several feet overnight. Every day it develops a little more. Its roots spread deeper into the ground before anyone notices changes above the surface. For a long time, growth seems invisible. Then, gradually, it becomes impossible to ignore. Human development often works the same way. The habits you repeat every day quietly shape the person you become. Even when immediate results are difficult to see, small actions also reduce fear because they feel manageable. Starting a business may seem intimidating, but researching one idea for 30 minutes feels achievable. Writing an entire book can seem impossible, but writing one page is realistic. Running a marathon feels overwhelming, but walking around the neighborhood for 15 minutes is within reach. The smaller the first step becomes, the harder it is for fear to justify avoiding it. Momentum is another powerful result of taking small actions. A parked car requires far more effort to start moving than one already traveling down the road. The same is true for human behavior. Beginning is often the hardest part. Once you have started, continuing becomes easier because your mind has already shifted from thinking to doing. Action creates energy that thinking alone cannot produce. Many successful people understand the importance of momentum. They rarely wait until they feel inspired before beginning their work. Instead, they rely on routines and consistent habits. They know that motivation is unpredictable. Some days enthusiasm is high. Other days it disappears completely. If progress depends entirely on motivation, consistency becomes impossible. Small daily actions create a system that continues moving forward, regardless of temporary emotions. Confidence grows through repetition. The first conversation with a stranger may feel uncomfortable. The 10th becomes easier. The 100th feels natural. The first presentation may be filled with nervousness. After giving many presentations, confidence develops because experience has replaced uncertainty. Every repetition teaches your brain that the situation is survivable, reducing fear while increasing competence. Another important benefit of small actions is that they make learning faster. Large decisions often carry significant pressure because so much seems to depend on getting everything right. Small experiments allow you to test ideas without overwhelming risk. If one approach doesn't work, you adjust and try again. Instead of viewing setbacks as major failures, you treat them as valuable information that helps improve your next attempt. Small actions also strengthen discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood as extraordinary willpower. In reality, discipline is usually built through ordinary choices repeated consistently. Waking up on time, completing one important task before distractions appear, practicing a skill every day, or keeping promises to yourself may seem minor individually. Together, these repeated behaviors shape your identity. You begin seeing yourself as someone who follows through rather than someone who only makes plans. Identity plays a significant role in long-term success. Every action sends a message about who you are becoming. Reading regularly reinforces the identity of someone who values learning. Exercising consistently reinforces the identity of someone who prioritizes health. Creating content every week reinforces the identity of a creator. These identities become stronger over time because they are supported by repeated evidence rather than wishful thinking. Another reason small actions matter is that they create opportunities impossible to predict. One conversation leads to another. One article inspires a new idea. One project introduces you to someone who changes your career. One habit opens doors that did not exist before. Progress often unfolds through unexpected connections that only become visible after taking the first step. Waiting for complete certainty prevents these opportunities from ever appearing. People sometimes dismiss small efforts because they compare them to dramatic success stories. They see overnight achievements without recognizing the years of quiet preparation behind them. Every remarkable accomplishment is built on thousands of ordinary moments that received little attention. The audience notices the performance, but not the countless hours of practice. They celebrate the victory, but rarely witness the daily commitment that made it possible. Your future is rarely transformed by one massive decision. More often, it is shaped by the small choices you make repeatedly. Every positive habit compounds over time. Every completed task builds trust in yourself. Every difficult conversation develops courage. Every attempt teaches a lesson. The accumulation of these seemingly ordinary actions eventually produces extraordinary results because consistency has a way of multiplying efforts far beyond what seems possible in the beginning. One of the greatest sources of stress, frustration, and overthinking comes from trying to control things that have never been within your control. People spend countless hours worrying about outcomes they cannot predict, opinions they cannot change, and circumstances they cannot influence. The mind naturally searches for certainty, but life rarely provides it. The more energy you invest in controlling the uncontrollable, the less energy you have for the things that can actually move your life forward. Every day, people wake up carrying invisible burdens. They worry about what others think of them. They worry about whether opportunities will appear. They worry about the economy, competition, luck, timing, and countless other external factors. While these concerns may feel important, worrying about them does not increase your ability to influence them. It simply drains your emotional energy and distracts you from taking meaningful action. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, trying to stop the wind from blowing. No matter how determined you are, the wind will continue moving according to its own direction. The only thing you can control is how you respond. You can find shelter, adjust your path, or prepare yourself for the conditions ahead. Life often works the same way. External events will continue happening regardless of your wishes, but your response remains one of the few things entirely within your power. This distinction between what you can control and what you cannot is one of the most valuable lessons anyone can learn. You cannot control how quickly success arrives, but you can control how consistently you work toward it. You cannot control whether everyone supports your dreams, but you can control whether their opinions determine your choices. You cannot control unexpected setbacks, but you can control whether you learn from them or allow them to define you. Many people delay taking action because they become obsessed with variables outside their influence. Someone wants to start a business, but spends months worrying about market conditions.